Hey, true crime fans, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the Netflix true crime documentary, Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story. If you're a true crime junkie just like me, you've probably heard of this infamous case. But in this documentary, Netflix takes us on a deeper journey into the twisted tale of the two brothers who shocked the nation by murdering their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in their Beverly Hills mansion in 1989. Now, this is clearly not the first time the Menendez brothers have been covered. We've seen them in the news, countless documentaries, and even the courtroom footage from their two high-profile trials in the 90s. But what Monsters does is bring a fresh perspective, diving into the psychological aspects behind the case, exploring not just the brutal murders, but the family dynamics, the abuse claims, and how this case became such a media circus. So for first impressions, right off the bat, Monsters feels different from your typical true crime documentary we've been seeing lately. It's not just a rehash of the same facts. Netflix really digs into the background of Lyle and Erik. We get interviews with people who knew them, which adds a more personal touch to the story. The docuseries doesn't just focus on the brothers as killers, but as human beings, flawed and damaged. And that's what makes it so intriguing. They spend a lot of time covering the alleged sexual and emotional abuse that Lyle and Erik claimed they endured at the hands of their father. And let me tell you, these allegations are still controversial. The brothers have always maintained that the abuse was the driving factor behind the murders, while skeptics argue it was all about the family fortune. The documentary does a good job of presenting both sides, and I like that. But it's pretty clear which side it does lean towards. It does focus on the brothers' trauma being really at the heart of it all. So what stands out to me? One of the things that I liked about Monsters is how it contextualizes the trial. It doesn't shy away from pointing out how the media sensationalized the entire case. I mean, we're talking about the early 90s, right? When court TV was becoming a thing and trials were turning into soap operas for the masses. This documentary shows us just how much the Menendez case was caught up in that, and how the media's portrayal of Lyle and Erik as cold-blooded rich kids pretty much sealed their fate. Also, I've got to mention the interviews. We get some pretty insightful commentary from psychologists, legal experts, and even a few people who were close to the family. Hearing different perspectives, especially from those who were actually in the courtroom, really adds another layer to the story. You start to see how complex this case was, and it makes you wonder, were Lyle and Erik truly victims, or were they just master manipulators? Another thing that struck me was the emotional tone. Yes, it's about a double homicide, but Monsters digs into the emotional toll it took on everyone involved. There's a lot of focus on the brothers' mental health, especially after the murders, and while you might not sympathize with them, it does make you think about how trauma can affect people in ways that aren't always visible. That's something the documentary emphasizes, how these two boys from a wealthy family could spiral into committing such a horrific act. Final thoughts. Overall, Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, is definitely worth the watch. It's not just another true crime documentary. It's a deep dive into a tragic family story with a focus on the psychological trauma that could have led to the murders. If you're into true crime that goes just beyond the details of the crime and delves into the why behind it, this one's for you. So if you haven't checked it out yet, head over to Netflix and give it a watch. And let me know in the comments, do you think the Menendez brothers were victims of abuse who snapped? Or were they just looking for a way to cash in on their parents' fortune? I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future true crime breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.